Peter Alderson, welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
As I am. Although looks as if I'd rather be there. Look at that beautiful view. Whereabouts are you?
I'm up in Coeur d'Alene, up in North Idaho. It's a little bit chilly today, but back up to the 90s tomorrow, no doubt.
Beautiful. How nice will that be with all the forestry around you?
Yes, yes.
Nice, nice. Okay, so let's get started. Peter is the co-founder and CEO of Province. Peter, let's hear from you first. Give us an idea of your background and what you're doing right now.
Sure. I've spent the last probably 10 years or so working with my current co-founder, Ian. We have been essentially building technology together for forever and a day. And it was back in 23 that the last company that we were at was acquired. As I said, I live up here in North Idaho. I have a relative who works in the construction industry who was continually pestering us to come in and kind of help figure out whether there's some things that we could build and there's some ways that we can help. We started building this sort of ITB type solution, which is where he sort of directed us. And we came to find that, as we were working with custom home builders and then production home builders and then bigger multifamily and commercial buildings. There was a real division between sort of those that did it well and then those that didn't. And the ones who were doing it really well were those who invested heavily in the pre-construction phase, right? They were drafting scopes, they were really taking their time and paying a lot of attention to it. And because we were judged on the sort of bid quality because of the ITB workflows, we would sort of say to these guys, look, we need to actually go back to the drawing board. We need to focus on scopes. We need to focus on like the pre-construction work to get it right up front and ensure that we're not going to have this mess on the other end. So we actually started writing these things manually, and then ultimately that's what led us to last year essentially throwing out everything we had built, rebuilding the whole product from the ground up to focus on the importance of this pre-construction early phase work, right? Getting scopes right, getting the constructability piece right, ensuring that, we were able to kind of spread, what we saw working really well among these, well-performing GCs to the rest of the industry.
Love it, love it. And we're going to get into all of that now with Peter, just to give people, listeners, an idea of what we're going to get through. We're going to go through Peter's background. We're going to talk in detail about Province, what it does for the pre-construction and the pre-construction managers and estimators out there, early project mapping, evidence-based points of reference. We're going to talk about AI, where it actually fits in pre-construction. We're going to talk about his plans. There may be a new product released later on in this podcast, which I'm looking forward to hearing about. And then just get Peter's thoughts on his beliefs of what he expected getting into construction and what the reality actually is. So looking forward to that. So let's go back. You mentioned your relative and Ian, your tech partner. What was the first idea that you guys had, and how has that developed into Province?
Well, so as I mentioned initially, we were sort of pointed to this challenge that GCs were having with regards to their trade base, right? Initially, they were seeing sort of higher cost inflation. They were wondering, who was the ideal subcontractor to take on this particular project. And so that's where we really first got our taste of the construction industry. And we started working with, as I say, GCs throughout Montana, Idaho, and Washington primarily to figure out, what was sort of the missing piece there. And it always sort of threaded back to the pre-construction work and a lot of folks not taking the time and effort to really get dialed in with respect to the project. We saw that there was a lot of work that could be done up front, which meant there would be sort of a well-positioned and well-shaped buyout at the end of the process. Alternatively, if it was sort of skipped or done in a light manner, they were just dealing with this mess on the other end, trying to figure out, as numbers are coming in, how the whole project gets pieced together, right? And so that was kind of like the key insight for us over time as we grew and we took on more complex projects that we knew that really the opportunity was to ensure that people had kind of the tools and ability to get this sort of pre-construction early phase scope drafting piece right, up front and early.
Brilliant, brilliant. And is there a particular market the province is utilized or you're targeting and it's really effective? And how is it effective within that market?
Yeah, so when we started working with these smaller builders. As we rebuilt the product in its entirety, we really got pulled out market. So the majority of our customers today are those operating in the ENR 400 category. Reason being is because they're the ones that understand the importance of the pre-construction effort the most, right? We did start working with these early, like very smaller customers, and ultimately came to learn that, they're the folks who sort of take a lot of that work for granted, kind of tend to skip it. But as soon as you get into these larger organizations, they're a very well-run, oiled machine. And so they're the ones who understand the importance of it and are investing accordingly in order to be able to do it right, right? Um, and the sort of thing that we're seeing is, our goal is ultimately to determine and show them the best way in which to, deliver the project, right? We're not looking to build a better sort of document reader. We're ultimately trying to identify, all the nuances that goes into the way in which they package up all their pre-construction work relative to who the customer is, the type of project that they're building, as well as the location of the project, right? And so we're seeing, fast improvements, and obviously like the time that it takes to get through a project, the amount of sort of RFIs and issues that are being surfaced early on, and it makes for the ability to, I think, process and work through more projects than they perhaps would be able to otherwise.
Brilliant, brilliant. And this document intelligence and the early project mapping, how does it work in layman's terms? If there's a general contractor out there now doing 400, 500 million, they've never heard of province, what can it effectively do and how quickly can it get up and running?
Yeah, so there are really three aspects that we focus on. So the first is we ingest all the plan set. We identify, as many issues as we can out of it. We're working to create RFIs. We're working to identify document completeness gaps, conflicting information in the plan set. We're looking with things like, line drawings match schedules within the document set. We're going ahead and we're packaging up and producing all the scopes of work across all trades that are going to need to touch and be involved in the project in order to get it built. And then lastly, we're also working with you on an ongoing basis as drawing revisions come in, right? So as we tend to work with folks at the very earliest of stages at the SDDD level set, and then as they get drawing progressions along the way, we work to map out exactly what's changed from one drawing stage to the next. We do that at the systems level, the bid package level, and at the sheet level. And then we automatically update and edit any scopes that have been produced and issued based upon those drawing set changes, right? And I think that, the key thing for us, as I mentioned, the GC will vary the way in which they go about to delivering a project based upon, who they are, the type of project, and where it is that they're building. And so, our belief is that the real value that we're working to add is to understand the nuances that go into that and ensure that, the output that we're providing is most aligned to the way in which they intend to tackle and deliver the project.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what about the human loop of it and the traceability? Obviously, I'm always thinking about new people coming into the industry, people leaving the industry. When province is finished, can you go back and look to see where it's picked up and what it's picked up, and accept those changes, or how does that part work?
Yeah, absolutely. We take the approach of, like trust but verify, right? So anything that we deliver to you is always grounded in document references. You can see exactly where from the plan set information was derived from. And we don't take the view that, AI should just be trusted blindly. You cannot simply just throw a whole lot of information at a model and expect it to return, all types of goodness. I think that the real challenge and trick is identifying, what's best to utilize for, as part of requesting, an AI model. Similarly, what's the best thing to use as part of a sort of deterministic check, and where do you introduce the user to sort of verify or confirm whatever it is that's being returned, right? And I think that, that's been real focus for us and working with our customers closely to sort of understand, what is the right level of detail in order to return something back to them to ensure that, they can kind of clearly see where the issue is derived.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then obviously historical data, it's using historical projects to be able to do that.
We are today primarily focused on the current plan set, but the way in which we operate is that we have a learning loop essentially. And so anytime a project gets run, if the GC works to, let's say, consolidate a couple of bid packages or make an edit to an inclusion in a particular scope, the system works to learn from that, right? The goal that we have is that, we look internally to determine like what is the level of change set that's being run on the project after we've delivered it. So, over time, essentially, we're working to make the product more specific to the way in which that general contractor operates. And again, this comes back to the point that they're all different and they also differ depending upon, whether they're building like a hospital in Pennsylvania or a multifamily project in Arizona, right? And so the way in which they carve up, the way in which they intend to deliver the project, that's really their core IP. It's their operating model, right? And the way in which we work is that we want to learn that, and we learn that over time, the more projects that get run through the system with us.
Yeah, incredible. You mentioned there a healthcare project and a multifamily project. Is there any specific sector that you see it working really well?
It really shines in the multifamily sector, I think simply because that's where we initially started. It's been later in that we've started taking on things like data centers, military projects. There's TI projects in there. There is like an absolute plethora of different projects that we've taken on. The multifamily projects, I think, just because of the legacy that we've had in terms of like where we started, I think it shines really well, and we've seen a lot of large customers, like developers as well, leverage the product because of that.
Brilliant, brilliant. And we'll get back into the product in a little bit, but what's it been like building a tech product or being a tech startup in construction? Give us your experience.
Yeah, I think that construction does have like at times a little bit of a bad rap for being a technology adopter. Um, but at the same time, I don't know that it's not all that justified, right? So I think like if you look at the landscape, there was, I believe, like a lot of innovation in the early days around new technologies coming to the market to serve the industry. But I think, like nowadays, a lot of these sort of incumbent products have become really large. They're typically dialing up, the cost button as opposed to the innovation knob. And a lot of the entrenched software has also been acquired by either the incumbents or private equity firms, and so they're sort of taking a similar approach. And so I think that GCs are kind of right within their position to demand more from the vendors whom they're working with. And I would also posit that like a lot of the new stuff that we see coming into the market, like they're not sort of working with the GC in the way in which they want to buy, right? And like for instance, a general contractor works on a per project basis. A lot of the stuff out in the industry is sold on a per seat basis. And so, I think we've taken the approach to ensure that the product that we're delivering is kind of a no-brainer, right? In order to take on. It sort of fits the purchasing model and the commercial model that they are accustomed to working within. And we also, give you kind of like the proof point up front that the technology works without any overhead or investment, right? And so because of all those things, I think that the adoption that we've seen has been really fantastic. And that's allowed me to sort of like shift my mindset from, oh, this industry is like really hard to sell technology into, to I think a lot of the time it's a position that's been driven from there not being a lot of great options, and the options that are out there are sort of like in conflict or don't really fit the way in which a general contractor works today. Right? They're trying to sell a product the way that they want to deliver the product, as opposed to the way the buyer wants to buy the product.
Yeah, it's funny. We get a lot of that. Because I think the misconception is each general contractor or even developer run through pre-construction the same way, and that's just not the case. I think that's why the single point solutions are having a lot more success than the all encompassing ones. And then feedback wise from your clients, obviously the big buzzword is AI. From your opinion, coming from tech, where does AI actually fit in pre-construction? Where is it most effective?
So I there's been a lot of talk about, AI going to replace a whole host of jobs, and as the estimator, how they're going to be impacted, et cetera. Um, my belief is that a job is typically like a whole series of tasks, right? And there are some tasks that are lower value, and there are some tasks that are higher value, right? And I think that, AI is going to be for a while, like squarely pointed at those lower value tasks. And typically, what that does is it just shifts the nature of the job, right? So if you look at an estimator in terms of what they're doing on a regular basis, there are a lot of things in there which they could be, spending their time in other places to achieve something of higher value. So, if they're spending time trying to sift through and find like the latest version of, some document that they need, what is the current set? If they're trying to busy replying to emails around like what's the update on like when the project start time is. Things like this, AI is going to take off their plate. And I think most of the time and attention is going to shift to things like spending more time on site and understanding how constructability, decisions came together and play out on site, spending more time with owners, spending more time with subs, identifying different VE options. So I think it's going to shift much of their job. And I think that, AI right now is really primed and really working well in some of those earlier stage things, which perhaps are going to be sort of less important to the general, to the estimating team. Right?
Yeah, I can hear the project managers and estimators shouting, "Yes, yes, yes, Peter." That's what they want. They want to do the most enjoyable things, that the things that they believe they got into pre-construction for, making real high level decisions. And then that kind of brings us to the next question about your plans for the next 5 years, not only for the product, but for AI. Can you give us a little bit of a look under the hood?
Yeah, I mean, we in the next 5 years will become the default operating system for pre-construction across the industry, right? There is a path and a set of foundations that we have in place in order to get to that point, which is, being able to very clearly understand the documentation, the plan sets that get delivered, but also modeling the product based upon the way in which the customer and the general contractor wants to deliver that actual product. There are a whole host of like fundamental issues that need to be addressed along the way. And one of them that we've just introduced is essentially working to create kind of a shared language between the general contractor, the architect, and the engineers and the owner around, what is a complete set of drawings, right? So we do this at the SD, the DD, and the CD level. We run a whole series of checks to identify, where the gaps are, where there is missing information. And if you're putting a claim out that, a document set is 100% DD, then it should have things A, B, and C in it, right? Specific to the project. That allows for kind of like the shared understanding, because ultimately the industry is a super collaborative one. Everyone needs to work together on the same page in order to deliver a project. And so without having this sort of like shared understanding as to where the plans are and a shared understanding of whether they sort of fit a complete model based upon the stage that they're being claimed to be, that's really difficult, right? And so this is something that we've just recently introduced. We again like to work with folks at the earliest of stages of projects, and so we can start to deliver this, even at the SD level, and that's it's been really well received, and it's informing a lot of good quality conversations that GCs are having with the broader team engaged on the project.
Brilliant. So you simply grab the documents or the drawings, you put them into your product, and then it basically goes through and ensures that A, there's nothing missing, but B, there may be a bit of risk in and they see it as risk, so they point it out. Then there's the traceability piece where it brings you to it. So then you can go to either the client or the sub and go and question it.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think it really brings people together if there's this sort of like pent up view that, this should include this and this should not include that. then being able to have kind of a shared universal language around like here is our expectation for something that if you're claiming it as 100% DD, like it should have this. And if it doesn't, there's a problem, and the problem is going to be reflected in the level of pricing detail that we get. Right? We're going to have gaps. We're going to have things that need to be rebid, repriced, or we're going to like account for some buffer in there. Like if we just don't have good, clean answers to this sort of thing, right? And so the trick is, can we get this stuff out in front of people early to ensure that we are, like getting the right information that we need in terms of being able to kind of pull together numbers and budgets and understand our trade base and how they're going to be engaged on the project the first time.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love it. And when can we expect that product, or what are we, whereabouts are we at with it?
That's available now. So we've been testing this for quite some time. We've been working with the existing customer base with different prospects. We've been engaged with different architecture and engineering firms to kind of figure out like what is that universal sort of set of information look like? How does it sort of differ based upon the project and the drawing stage? And that's available today.
Brilliant. Now, give us an idea of obviously you've been working with a select few developers, contractors. What has the general feedback been like on Province? I mean, did it surprise you? I mean, you've obviously been doing it for quite a while now. Have you pivoted at any stage from the contractor feedback, or how has that kind of roadmap been?
I mean, yeah, we had like drastically pivoted. I mean, I said, we spent a number of years like working in this sort of like ITB bid space, right? And like
Just
the
sorry,
notion of
just on that, what's ITB? Just in case someone doesn't know.
like an invitation to bid
Good.
service,
Yeah.
right? So, we spent a lot of time in that market trying to essentially like focused in on, this is kind of the key piece that's going to bring the project together. Like the pre-construction work primarily is, identifying a subcontractor, gathering pricing, building a budget. So we spent a lot of time in that world. And, the big learning that came from that is that, you can push out bid invites, you can build a budget around a project, but the budget is going to be a real challenge if the subs don't have very clear specifics around exactly what it is that they're pricing. And you're just going to be making endless number of phone calls to clarify this, that, and the other from the trade base in order to build what you expect is an accurate budget. And then when you go and rewrite a contract, you're going to find that there's a whole host of differences as well. And so this is what actually led us upstream. It led us to rebuild the product in its entirety and just come back to this notion of, everything is ultimately going to be keyed off the initial plans and the planning work that goes into the pre-construction effort prior to pushing anything to bid, right?
Very good.
And so, yeah, that was the big shift. And I mean, because of that shift, it also pushed us up market to again, and as I mentioned, like the folks who really understand pre-con, they understand the value of it, they have, made significant investments in order to get it right. And so, we're really now, helping accelerate that process internally for them.
I'm interested to the way you pivoted there. Was that from feedback from the sub trades or from the GCs? Because it sounds like the subs kind of led you to pivot and to that change.
I think so. It was a combination of both the subs and the GCs. In those early days, we were we were we were we were gathering numbers from the trade base that the contractor had already worked with, but we were also introducing new subcontractors into the mix, right? To identify, what was sort of the price spread on different trades, where was there opportunity to, bring on new folks or, condense different bid packages in different places. And the 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 feedback, because we were introducing new subs, we would be judged on our ability to collect like the right numbers across, like a quality set of subcontractors, had good trade coverage, have like depth in the numbers that were coming back. And without the scopes in place and without really digesting and understanding all the nuances of the plans and the way in which the project was being built, we were the ones who were having to deal with this issue downstream of where we get a bunch of numbers and we don't have, certain line items from some subs and we have some from others. And this was what really prompted us to head upstream and figure out, okay, well, if this, uh, as the numbers come back, start to all turn into a mess, these folks need to be steered directly and kind of bound around what it is that they're going to be pricing. And this sort of led us to be the ones who were actually producing scopes. We were editing some of the existing scopes that we thought didn't have like enough detail or detail or clarity for the subcontractor in order to price with the general contractor, of course. And it's that insight that led us to essentially rebuild the product and go back to basics, go back to understanding the plans, the way in which a general contractor wants to deliver a project, the trade carve up that they intend to overlay it, and ensure that we could, deliver a product that would essentially allow us to scale that to many, many GCs across country.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, there's no question. I speak to hire managers, pre-con managers, senior estimators. The biggest pain point is incomplete drawings, 20-30% drawings. So I can imagine that the market needs something like this. Well, listen, Peter, really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd want to clear up before we head off, and I can let people to know where to find you?
I mean, we're continually taking on more projects and working with more and more customers. I think that, the product that we've got, we're making a lot of investments around ensuring that, we're working with the general contractor to understand the best way in which they want to deliver the project, as opposed to, just being a better plan reader. And I think that, we're starting to see the fruits of that effort with essentially, the way in which our output is being taken and leveraged kind of immediately out in the field there.
Love it. Love it. And if there is anybody listening to this now, Peter, and they're saying, you know what, I like what Peter's saying, I could do with something like that in my company, where's the best place to get in contact?
You can find us online at getprovince.com. You can reach out to me directly. It's peter@getprovince.com.
Love it. I will put all that in the show notes below, folks. So if you are, I'll put the LinkedIn profile of Peter as well, so you can head him up with any questions. Peter Alderson, that was a pleasure. I wish you all the best. Looking forward to catching up with you in the next 6 months. I'm particularly interested in this new product. I want to see progress on that, and I would like to catch up with you soon to see how it's going. Feedback is.
Would love to.
Thanks, Peter. Have a good day.
Thank you.